Africana or Africana, both the same. Okay, so welcome to the channel. Today I'm here to talk about this book and this book. So I'm here to talk about these two. This one is called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. It's a really good book so that we can understand basically what we're going through as black people. So we can understand the trauma we've been through and why we act in certain ways. So it's a really good book for that. So I'll be reading a short text. This book is Black Skin, White Masks. It's written by philosopher Fanon. Frantz is his full name. He's a brilliant philosopher, and the book really talks about his experiences as a black man in a white world and what that means in terms of relationships, in terms of race and politics and philosophies and things like that. So it's really interesting for you to read if you want to kind of understand philosophy more, if you want to understand yourself as a black person more. I would say read this book. It's a fantastic book. So when I was 12 years old, I was in high school in year 8, and I was bullied by these black boys in my year. And I just thought to myself, I don't know why they're bullying me, but the reason why they were bullying me is because I was black. At this point, I was a bit confused, okay, because I didn't understand how someone from more or less the same shade of skin as me can bully me for being black. What they say, black, blick, you're blicker than black, it didn't make any sense. Blick, for anyone who doesn't know, it means to be blacker than black. That's what that is. So I kind of started to invert into myself. I would say that I lost touch with my own culture because of this. So this is where the confusion came in. Like, I was confused about my identity and about where I came from. Even though I already knew where I came from, this experience really confused me for a while, actually. Now I'm going to read a section from Fanon's book, specifically from his chapter, The Fact of Blackness, because it really relates to what I'm talking about. So here we go. Okay? Here we go. Look, a Negro. It was an external stimulus that flickered over me as I passed by. I made a tight smile. Look, a Negro. It was true. It amused me. Look, a Negro. The circle was drawing a bit tighter. I made no secret of my amusement. Mama, see, the Negro. I'm frightened, frightened, frightened. Now, they were beginning to be afraid of me. I made up my mind to laugh myself to tears. But laughter had become impossible. I could no longer laugh because I already knew that there were legends, stories, histories, and above all, historicity, which I had learnt about from Jaspers. Then, assailed at the various points, the corporeal schema crumbled, its place taken by a racial epidermal schema. In the brain, it was no longer a question of being aware of my body in the third person, but in a triple person. In the train, I was given not one, but three places. I had already stopped being amused. It was not that I was finding febrile coordinates in the world. I existed triply. I occupied space. I moved towards the other, evanescent other. Hostile, but not opaque. Transparent, not there. Disappeared. Nausea. I was responsible at the same time for my body, for my race, for my ancestors. I subjected myself to an objective examination. I discovered my blackness, my ethnic characteristics, and I was battered down by tom-toms, cannibalism, intellectual deficiency, fetishism, racial defects, slave ships, and above all, Shogun eaten. On that day, completely dislocated, unable to abroad with the other, the white man, who unmercifully imprisoned me. I took myself far off from my own presence, far indeed, and I made myself an object. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. If we really look at what he's saying here, it's actually very similar to a lot of the experiences that we experience as black people. Being a man or a woman or a black child, we will all experience this, because it's really talking about that moment in time where you discover what it means to be black in relation to the outside world. And when I say the outside world, I don't mean the world where we grow up in our culture, but I mean the outside. So how other people see us, you know, and see our history. Because a lot of people think that our history started with slavery, and that is very wrong. And this is why I'm doing this channel, because I feel there's a very big need to learn about our pre-colonial history, learn about Africa pre-slavery and what was actually going on there. Yes, there are fantastic discoveries, and yes, there are terrible things that did exist, like slavery existed in Africa. I'm not saying otherwise, and we know this through the ancient Egyptians. But the thing that I'm saying is, it's really important to learn where we come from through ourselves, and that's why I'm reading Fanon's section on the fact of blackness, because when I read this, I realized that our experience is much more universal than I thought it was. So the fact that, I think he wrote this in the 1950s, I don't know what edition this is an edition, it's an old edition, but or maybe he wrote in the 1960s, and so we can see that our experiences are very similar, even though my experience was through other black people, and his was through white people, but then it makes us question, why do we as black people interact with each other in this way, and what has happened in that time frame for it to go from a white person to a black person who's doing the harming, when we discover the fact that we are black in society and what that actually means. So that's an interesting conversation to have. So if you have any comments about that, please put it down below and we can chat about it. Yeah, so now I'm going to read, actually no, I'm not going to read her. I will read. I'm going to read her book. I've released a small section of her book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, Dr. Degruy. Okay, here we go. Let's have a read. Now, the first thing I want to read is this sign called Sankofa. It will be here. Sankofa means we must return and claim our past in order to move towards our future. It is in understanding who we were that will free us to embrace who we now are. That's really important. Like that, I think that's the mission. If this channel has any mission, it is this mission, to understand where we come from our perspective, so that we know where we need to be. So that's why I wanted to read that out. Okay. So I'm going to start halfway, because this is actually quite a long section. But actually no. So let's go. I'm going to start here. In the summer of 1994, my sister, my niece and I were among 9 African American women that traveled to Southern Africa together. Upon my return, I found it difficult to adjust to being back in Portland, Oregon, a city once taunted as being the whitest city in America. My 6-week journey throughout Southern Africa had left an indelible mark on my heart and soul. I sat in my living room, reminiscing about the villages in Lesotho, the sweetness of the children, their level of generosity, and their well-mannered behavior. We were always treated kindly and offered food and drink, even when there was barely enough for one person, let alone guests. This reminded me of how my mother always used to feed what seemed to be the whole neighborhood. She taught my brothers, my sister and I that there was always enough food to share. Now, I was back at home trying to re-assimilate into my daily routines. My difficulty achieving this caused considerable concern amongst some of the women who were on the trip. They had begun calling my sister asking, "Has Joy left the house yet?" My many years as a mental health clinician at least assured me that I was not nuts. I simply needed time to adjust to having been in a place where for the first time it felt perfectly normal to be black. It felt odd returning to America, to a place where being black is frequently a life sentence of cultural isolation and social invisibility. My reminiscing was abruptly cut short when my 9-year-old daughter came racing into the room. She was out of breath and quite panicked about a situation that was happening outside in front of our house. There's a boy outside who's threatening to beat up Nadine, her brother. And he says he's going to pee on our car too, she said as she tried to catch her breath. When I was finally going to have to get out of the house. I walked out onto a scene of several young black boys standing in the middle of the street. They looked to be around 10 or 11 years old. They were facing my son, who stood alone. I identified the boy standing directly in front of my son as the instigator and asked, "Is there something that my son has done that you would like to tell me about?" The young, rather strut and angry little boy responded, "What are you staring at?" "Excuse me," I said. "What did you say?" And the boy repeated, "I want to know what he's staring at. Does he got some kind eyeball problem? Does he got some Does he got some kind of eyeball problem?" I was a little startled, but managed to ask, "Are you saying that you wanted to beat my son into the ground because he was looking at you?" The young man seemed a bit uneasy with my question, hesitated and responded, "Yeah, what is he looking at?" I paused for a moment considering what he had said, and then I responded, "My son may have been looking at you because he thought that you might want to play some basketball. In front of the house we have a hoop. He may have been looking at you because he was thinking of asking you if you'd like to play on one of his video games in the house. He could have been looking at you because he thought that maybe you might want to walk down the street to the park." The little boy looked to be rather overwhelmed by my statements, as if to say, "Whoa, lady, it's not that deep." I guess it was the therapist in me that got out of control. I eventually managed to settle things down by giving the boys my canned spiel, explaining how important it is for African Americans living in the hood not to fight and to keep each other safe. He seemed to buy it enough to agree not to beat up my son, much to Nadine's relief. After the boys had walked away, it dawned on me that there was a stark contrast between this experience and ones in South Africa, where the young African males greeted each other with a common phrase, "I see you." I couldn't help feel the emotional distance that separated the two statements, the friendly acknowledgement, "I see you," and the angry, menacing, "What you looking at?" The gap between Africans and African Americans was suddenly stark and clear. Somewhere along the way, African American children have become so emotionally fragile that they cannot often withstand the implications associated with a simple gaze. Now, this is really interesting. I'm going to tell you why it's really interesting to me, and then let me know what you think in the comments. If we look at Fanon, when he discovered his blackness, it was a very traumatic experience because he realized the heavy weight of what it means to be black. He realized that heavy weight, and it's not a nice thing to realize, because sometimes when you're in a space and you're the only black person, it becomes really exhausting to be that, because you represent everything that it means to be black in society. And that is a horrible feeling. I've been there myself, and it's not something that I like. But what's really interesting about what Dr. Joy is saying is that when Africans say, I see you, they're saying that they see that person. They see who that person is. They see the pain within that person and what it means to be black or African. They see that. But when someone, this is in America, I know that in England it's different, but in America someone's then saying, what you looking at, as if to say, what the fuck you looking at, you know what I mean? Like, with that kind of little bit of aggression, that then is saying something completely different. It's almost like you see something. So if I'm looking at you and you think I see something about you that you don't want people to see, and this is where it becomes about how we self-represent and how we, in a sense, how we become ourselves. So how do we define our selfhood? Down below, I'm going to leave a poem about discovery of blackness, which is really interesting. It's a really nice poem. It's in Spanish, but there is English subtitles. I'm going to leave that poem below. I'm also going to leave, if you want to know more about the book Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, but you don't own it, I'm going to leave a Facebook post of a lady called Tanya Cyan. She's read the whole of that book, so you can sit and listen to her and just kind of listen to the words, and it's for free. Also, I will also leave a PDF copy of Franon's book, which is interesting for you to read. It's a really good read as well, so that's what that's there for. So yeah, please, if you like the video, please subscribe, because it's really important. Let's subscribe, let's help each other out. Like the video, put a thumbs up on the video if you like it, and share it, because it's about sharing. It's about getting the knowledge out there, because as I've heard, knowledge is power, yeah? And if knowledge is power, we need to get ourselves with this knowledge and talk about these things. Peace and love.